What's good, Buffs Nation? What's good? We got to chop it up with our guy, Drake Toll, over there at Locked On Big 12 to get the Big 12 perspective on how they feel about Colorado this season and the trajectory that they're going. Drake dropped some dimes in there, man. Some pretty good info that I did not realize, while at the same time, he had to eat a little bit of crow. So let's listen to Drake and let's talk about the Buffs here on the prime time for college football. What's going on, Buff Nation? We've got a special treat for you here. We've got the Big 12 expert, the guy, the man, the myth, the legend. We got Drake Toll over there at Locked On Big 12. Drake, how's it going, my man?
Jay, always a pleasure. I'll be the first one to say it. I will start this off by saying that I certainly doubted Colorado, the Buffs, Deion Sanders early this season, preseason especially, and eating crow, foot is in my mouth, barely fits. This team has been special to watch. The brand of football they play currently and the character that both Deion and his team have shown this season is very impressive.
Yeah, let's talk about that. So this has been a season that's been a shocker for a lot of people. Not yours truly. My prediction was 9-3. And unfortunately, the games they lost are not the games that I picked. I didn't pick Nebraska and Kansas State. I picked UCF. I picked Oklahoma State. And I forgot the third one off the top of my head. But they're winning games that doesn't feel like they Arizona. It was a road game against Arizona. That was the one I thought. And I was way off on that part. But I saw bowl game. I saw potential push for conference championship. But on the outside looking in, the perspective from the Big 12, what do you guys see out of this team that just jumps out to you?
I think the first word is dangerous. Colorado can beat anybody in the Big 12. And if you go back to that Kansas State game, they did beat Kansas State until they didn't anymore. They were right there in the thick of winning that game against a very good Chris Kleiman-led team. And since then, they've been unscathed. The dominating win against Arizona, beating a solid Cincinnati team, and down the stretch here, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, Oklahoma State. Colorado should be favored in all of those games. So when I use the word dangerous, it goes for all Big 12 teams, and it especially goes for these last four that are on their schedule, because I foresee Colorado winning each of these. And then dangerous nationally, too, not just from the Big 12 perspective. If you take a 10-2 Colorado team who's in the top 15 and say, look, there's just no way they make the college football playoff, you're dead wrong, especially given that Colorado has so many eyeballs on their football season. The more they win, the more people watch, the more that viewership number goes up, the hotter they are for the college football playoff, because there are human being people, the actual like flesh, like us, Jay, who will put these teams in the college football playoff, and they're always looking at what's going to drive revenue. Colorado will drive revenue. Whether they go to the Big 12 championship and win it or finish 10-2 outside of Arlington, they've got a shot to play in the postseason in the big dance.
And I'm glad you said that. 10-2 is the number that we can say that Colorado's definitely aiming at. They're on a nice winning streak. And to wrap the season up, for them, the big game, you got Texas Tech next week. Then you've got Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State. When you look at that schedule down the stretch, how good do you think Colorado will fare in those games?
Yeah, I feel really good about the game against Utah, it being in Boulder, Utah floundering right now. And while Kansas has been improved and Texas Tech has shown bright spots, I still don't see those being an issue. And then you come back to Boulder to finish the season against Oklahoma State. While Utah, they were the preseason favorite. Their defense is still decent. And while Kansas has caught on a little bit, I just don't know if they can put up with the athletes of Colorado. I've yet to mention an actual player, whether it be Jimmy Horn Jr. to Shedeur Sanders to Sheduer Sanders, a Heisman quality quarterback, or Travis Hunter, the winner of the Heisman Trophy. Can those four schools put up with the list of athletes that Colorado has thrown out there? I don't think so right now. And the offensive line is not elite. The offensive line is not great. The offensive line is developed into good. They continue to improve week in and week out. And guess what? The defensive front is doing the same thing. We saw that on full display against Arizona and Noah Fafita with the amount of times that Colorado spent in the backfield in that game a couple of weeks ago. With that, with the two fronts playing well, the two fronts improving, and the amount of star cast on both sides of the ball, the next four games for Colorado, the Buffs should be favored in each of them and will likely win each of them.
The fascinating thing behind that is as you mentioned, the offensive line. We're talking to Drake Toll over there at Locked On Big 12. Check him out. Link is in the description below. Is that the Offensive line, you said, they're not great, but they're growing together.
Yeah.
This is a team that has been built out of the transfer portal. 2 straight seasons, Colorado has led the country in transfers. And so this has been basically everybody's, I guess the best way to say it, guinea pig, to see if you can literally live out of the portal. Right now, the class is not huge. How does that fare in comparison to the other Big 12 teams? Do you see other teams possibly trying to mimic this and try to see if they can get the success that Colorado's having?
Well, it's crazy, Jay, that I used it as a derogatory statement a while ago that this is AAU football, that we can just kind of take the roster and flip it over. But that's what Colorado is doing, is they're flipping a roster over year and bringing in the best football team on paper in the Big 12, the most 4 stars, the most 5 stars. And when it clicks, with or without continuity, by the way, because when you replace your entire offensive line, there is no continuity. They were all playing together for the first time. And that usually is not a recipe for success in college football. It has been for the Buffs, and it proves that schools who have the coach that's willing to do this, a coach that's willing to do this, or the resources to do so, will go out and not necessarily buy a team, but build a team. That's what Colorado has done. Now, will Kansas State ever do that? Will Iowa State ever do that? I don't see it. I don't think they have that style of coach or those resources. And they can take the corn-fed, homegrown boys and play a fifth-year senior out there who is going to bring absolute dog to the table. But Colorado says, hey, you've got that fifth-year senior you developed. We've got a 5-star who played 3 years at a different school. They developed them. We're going to enter them into our culture and win with that guy because he's already better than yours. And that's dangerous.
Yeah, it is. And it's just wild that they were able to have so many transfers and, like I said, see this type of success. It's not something we've ever seen before so far, and they may have changed the game.
Yeah.
The defense here at Colorado has been masterful, especially in the second half. Now, some games they do start slow, but then the second half they turn it up. Arizona, they gave up a touchdown early, didn't give up a single score again. In the second half of Cincinnati, they gave up 10 points of the 23. They were able to really start shutting things down. Same thing with UCF. Gave up most of the points in the first half, 7 points in the second. The team seems like it starts to wind itself up. Have we seen the peak of Colorado football, or do you think that they've got another gear?
I don't think we have seen the peak, and that goes back to the way the Buffs have been able to get better and better week in and week out. Look at that Baylor game, and that was kind of a segue of offensively, Colorado wasn't good against Nebraska. They weren't very good against Colorado State. They weren't to their full potential against Colorado State. They weren't to that full potential against Baylor, but you could tell week by week they were getting better, and then bam, they completely exploded against UCF. The defense was so good against Kansas State, and they almost closed that game out for a win. Then Arizona, the culmination of what Colorado can be, and I think what it showed you against Cincinnati is as they start to play more competitive, better football teams, they are developing a roster that's better week in and week out, which is what makes it so dangerous for their next 4 opponents. What makes Colorado so dangerous, that is, for their next 4 opponents. And Jay, defensively right now, analytically, they improve week in and week out. And I go to collegefootballinsiders.com every week and see how teams are developing those categories. Colorado has the number 21 pass defense in America, efficiency-wise. Their EPA against the pass, 21 in America. That, in our industry, Jay, is what we call good.
It's good, and that's what matters. And with the way the schedule is lining up, Colorado has a challenge. They have a challenge here that we've got to talk about. Can they make it to the Big 12 championship game? Right now, the way Colorado's schedule is set up, we talked about their next games, Texas Tech, Utah, Kansas, and then Oklahoma State. 2 road, 2 home games, perfect. But they're battling against a Kansas State team who has 1 loss in conference. You're dealing with BYU and Iowa State, who are undefeated. Now, luckily, Kansas State does play Iowa State at the end of the season, but BYU's schedule does not really line up against anyone that we actually think they can lose to. Drake, tell me, what is the path for Colorado to get to the Big 12 championship?
Well, it's obviously going to be tough, Jay, because you don't hold that future in your own hands. BYU and Iowa State, as long as they win out, will be in the Big 12 championship game. So this is the odd part of that year where you as a football program not only root for yourself to win every game, but somebody else to go upset either BYU or Iowa State and give the Buffs an opportunity to play in the Big 12 championship, because then we don't have to talk about, does 10-2 Colorado have an outside shot? Is 10-2 Colorado a bubble team? Instead, we're saying, hey, Colorado's in the Big 12 championship. they can go win it in Arlington and be a lock for the college football playoff. So not only do you have to win all 4 games that are left on your schedule, you've got to hope that Iowa State drops a couple, or that BYU drops a couple, and Kansas State drops 1 or 2 in this game, in this season down the line. I don't know if that's going to happen. It lines up fairly favorably for BYU. And then if Kansas State goes out and beats Iowa State, you're looking at BYU, Kansas State in the Big 12 championship. Colorado still stuck at 10-2 and outside looking in. But I've been here before as a fan of the Baylor Bears. When I was in college at Baylor a few years back, they were counting on Oklahoma State to upset Oklahoma in the Bedlam game. Otherwise, Baylor was held out of the Big 12 championship. There are fan bases every year who go into the last 2 weeks of the season rooting for someone to lose. And every now and then it works out in your favor.
That's true. I mean, I've seen it in numerous occasions that, like you said, a team is rooting for somebody else to lose because they didn't take care of the business regular season like they should have to beat that team to keep themselves in there. They needed one more team to knock a team off for them. And
Jay, I mean, if you play it today, Colorado, Nebraska, I think the Buffs win that game by 10, 14 points. We always talk in college football about the development of a team. We go back to week 2 and we say, yeah, so-and-so lost in week 2, but they're a different football team today. They'll always say about Notre Dame. Notre Dame's a different football team than they were when they played Northern Illinois. That's the same for Colorado. And that loss to Kansas State, if they play again, Kansas State might win. That's a very good, a juggernaut of a Kansas State team. I think K-State might win 6 out of 10 times, but the Buffs have as good a shot as anybody if they get a rematch in the Big 12 championship game. And I go back to Nebraska. Had they beaten Nebraska, finish 11-1 with that loss to Kansas State still on their docket, they're definitely in the college football playoff. That's the one I want back, that Nebraska game, even more so than Kansas State.
I can totally see that. I mean, the one thing I can give to Colorado in that Kansas State game, though, is they lost on a last throw of the game for the most part. So if the defense, let's put it this way. If Travis Hunter plays in that game, do they actually get that deep pass off, and do they actually score there, taking advantage of the younger corners? I mean, even though Colton Hood basically had a pick six in his hands, besides the grass grabbed his ankle and knocked him to the ground, but they did score after that. And then the next play, Kansas State scores. So I guess the question is, if you have Travis Hunter, do you get it?
I say this. When I give you that 6 out of 10 number, that's directly from the analytics. Kansas State would win this game on paper 29-27. If you run it through the computer and the way the efficiencies stack up, which is stunning to me that they played again 10 times, 20 times. Colorado is right in the middle of that football game. It's a 50-50 coin flip, and that says a lot about Deion Sanders' development of this team.
I can totally see that. I can definitely see that. Thank y'all for pulling up. Make sure you check out Drake Toll over there at Locked On Big 12. He's dropping some dimes on a regular basis. And, he shows some Colorado love on there. So check him out. Link is in the description below, and follow him on the social medias. Make sure you check out the latest video here. Talk to Phillip Dukes. Always some good stuff. And make sure you subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss anything else that drops from us.